We all like to think we're in control of our actions. In fact, the everyday language we use implies we're in control. I chose to do this. I decided to do that. But do we really choose to do anything? In the early 1980s, neuroscientist Benjamin Libet conducted an experiment that is still argued about almost 5 decades later. Libet asked participants to spontaneously flex their wrist about 40 times whenever they felt like it, and measured any changes in activity in their brain using electrodes on the scalp of his subjects. He placed a screen in front of each participant with a dot swirling round in a circular motion like the hands of clock might move. After each action, he asked participants to tell the researchers roughly where on the clock face the dot was at the moment that they decided to act. This gave Libet 2 timestamps: the start of brain activity, measured by the electrodes, which Libet called the readiness potential, and the moment at which the person felt they chose to move, which he called the will. So the question is, which came first, the will or the start of the readiness potential? Perhaps you'd like to hazard a guess before I reveal the answer. Libet found that the decision to act, the time at which the subject became aware of their decision to flex their wrist, came about 200 milliseconds before the action, but the readiness potential started 350 milliseconds before that, or about half a second before the action took place. In other words, the brain processes responsible for planning the movement had begun over a third of a second before the person became aware of their desire to act. Those who wish to deny the existence of free will often cite Libet's experiment as proof of their belief. They argue that something is happening in the brain before consciousness, and so our consciousness cannot be the ultimate cause of our actions. Therefore, there cannot be such a thing as free will. There were, of course, objections to the experiment from those who wanted to defend free will. Deciding when to perform such a simple action like pressing a button or flexing your wrist is in no way analogous to a genuine choice. One would deliberate more carefully regarding choice with actual consequences, for example, deciding what subjects to study at an undergraduate level, what career to pursue, or who to marry. Also, Libet measures only a person's choice of when they should act, rather than in what way they should act, or even if they should act at all, further removing his experiment from the concept of genuine real-world choice. Other researchers have questioned the reliability of the results due to the fact that Libet relies on the participants' own recording of when they feel the intention to move. Subjects may not be able to accurately record the moment at which they felt the urge to act, and so we can't be certain the results of the experiment should be trusted. But Libet himself did not conclude that free will doesn't exist. Throughout the course of the experiment, he had observed that sometimes his participants mentioned that they had decided not to act just before the action was about to occur. In other words, they had consciously acted to veto or cancel their own action. Libet conducted another similar experiment in order to explore this further. He saw that when a participant decided to abort their actions, the readiness potential began as was expected from the previous experiment, but this time it flattened out and completely disappeared. From this, Libet concluded that although our consciousness could not initiate the action, it could indeed prevent it from occurring. Libet coined the term free won't to describe this phenomenon. From these findings, Libet proposed an alternative type of free will. Okay, we don't have the ability to control our impulses, but we can, however, consciously prevent them from being acted out, and so we can still justify holding people morally responsible for the decisions that they make. So, I suppose now the question becomes, are we the originator of our decisions, or are we the judge who allows or denies them to take place?